Definitely, education plays a role because you would think that in schools where education begins, you would expect all Malaysian children to be together as one. That is the role of national schools. But I think this is what the government had intended, the role of national schools, and which was why, probably one of the reasons why vernacular schools were slowly, well, the government attempted to put vernacular schools to rest, but that didn't work. But on hindsight, being a multiracial country, we should at the same time, and on the other hand, take advantage of our diversity. And which is probably why vernacular schools, particularly Chinese national type schools, came back with a vengeance. Unfortunately, again, this has polarized the education system, and we're seeing very young children being separated from each other. When children at a very young age don't see race and color, and unfortunately they are seeing this at a very young age.
Jadi sekolah jenis kebangsaan yang ada sekarang ini, sekolah jenis kebangsaan Cina, India yang ada sekarang ini, kita ubah dia kepada sekolah kerajaan. Rendah, tak ada jenis-jenis, tak ada dah. Sekolah rendah dan sekolah menengah, ya. Di sana semua pelajar-pelajar belajar di satu bilik darjah, makan minum di dalam satu kantin, dan bermain bersukan di satu padang dan gelanggang yang sama. Barulah kita boleh terapkan perpaduan dan integrasi nasional.
What creates this unity is a very complex issue, and it's not simply a matter of vernacular schools and other schools. Because if you look at sekolah kebangsaan, national schools as well, we can see that what's happening in national schools is alienating non-Malay, non-Muslim students. All right, there is an overemphasis on religion. It seeps everywhere, including your assembly. You know, it's, if you go to any national schools, you know, you will see the fact is that it's heavily biased in favor of Islam and Malay culture, right? So that could be an issue as well, but they're not talking about that, are they? You know, and there has to be a secularism in national schools in order to make everybody feel comfortable and equal. All right, but that doesn't happen. And then on top of that, there's also the question of quality, the quality of education. You know, it's too simplistic to say, vernacular school causes disunity, etc., when you don't look at the issues in national schools as well. Furthermore, you've got to question why parents send their children to vernacular schools, which incidentally includes many non-Chinese parents as well, right? And I think the underlying factor is that they consider it to be of a better quality education. Because when I was growing up, vernacular schools were not really very popular. Even amongst the Chinese community, it was considered almost second class. You know, they'd rather send their children to what was then known as English schools, right? Because that was where the future of the child was guaranteed. You know, the good education, foundation, etc., for them to go on. So for me, the issue really should be about making sure that your national schools are attractive to everybody, and able to provide a kind of solid foundational education in an atmosphere where everybody is included, in an inclusive atmosphere. You know, if you want religious schools, there's nothing to stop you from creating Islamic schools because it's in the constitution as well. So why make national schools appear like religious schools when you could actually have separate religious schools completely, and people who send their kids there will know this is what we're getting, right? So that kind of comment is divisive and extremely unsophisticated.
First of all, the question of polarization, you know, racial polarization in this country. I don't think it's strictly an education issue. You know, I think people segregate at whatever it is based on other issues that are something more important. I think the source of the roots of racial polarization in Malaysia is not just the question of the existence of different streams of education. But the more serious one is the question of post-May 13 and the new economic policy and the kind of the discrimination that existed. I think if we look at the root of it, this is the root of it.
I'm a product of a vernacular system. I did my first 6 years of studies in Tamil primary school in Batu Arang, and I went on to remove class, and I did until Form 6, I did everything in English. And till to date, 90% of my friends are Chinese, and I still in contact with my secondary school friends. The 6 year of Tamil education did not make me a chauvinist or a racist person in thinking. I only became a racist person, although I was a Malaysian, I only became a racist person. I became an Indian after going to university. When I see the polarization of the system where the Malay students and the Chinese students and the Tamil students are divided on racial lines, and the special privileges accorded to accorded to the Malays, and especially the Malays, and the attitude of the lecturers, and the Islamization and the Malayanization of the local universities. So, to blame the 6 years vernacular education as a cause of racial disunity, I will never agree, because a student, when you go through 6 years of vernacular education, later they go on to secondary school where they mix with Malay and Chinese students. I think the system of education where the ultimate objective is to make Malay as a single language, and slowly close down the Chinese and Tamil school is the ultimate objective, which was pronounced way back in 1956 in the Rahman Talib report. And definitely, I'm certain, especially Tan Sri Arshad, Pro-Chancellor of UiTM, has come up with this idea, because as educationists, they must know multilingualism will not hamper national disunity. You must look at the policies of the country which discriminates a certain race, discriminates certain language, discriminates certain type of education, that causes disharmony and disunity among the races.
So if you look at the blueprint, they have some very stark numbers. It says that 98% of Malays are in national schools, 96% of Chinese are in Chinese schools, much less in Tamil schools. I think 54% of Indians are in Tamil schools. There are still very many Indians who believe in national schools and don't want to move their children to Tamil schools. There are many Malays who are sending their children to SJKC, Chinese schools. I think this year is a record 80,000 Malays in Chinese schools. Well, the government is confident that when these children, having been separated at primary school, they will converge at secondary school. Because you only have, aside from the independent schools, which are 16 number, which is where the SJKC students move on to, but which is limited in places. Most of them end up in the Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan. So the government is confident that that is where they will converge and unite. We have our reservations because for what we see in secondary schools where our children go to, we find that the vernacular school students tend to keep to themselves. And the fact that the national language is the main medium of instruction in SMK, you find that these vernacular school students shy away from integrating. Sometimes teachers have to translate what they're teaching in Malay or English into Tamil or Mandarin. Or not necessarily the teacher, but through an interpreter who's probably another student. So this gets very frustrating for the teacher as well as the student. And most of them either only speak Tamil or only speak Mandarin, and they have a smattering of English and also a smattering of Malay. One of the disadvantages of vernacular schools is that they rarely get the national language.
There's a natural tendency for students to gravitate towards their own ethnic groups. I think the problem is deeper than whether they went to vernacular schools or national schools. Because I'm quite certain if you go to a national schools, you will see ethnic groupings happening anyway. You know, so I think the issue is not about the background of which schools they come from, but I think it's more of an entire societal thing. You know, if your family don't mix with people from other ethnic groups, then it is highly unlikely that you are going to be mixing with people with people from other ethnic groups as well. You know, so it's more complex than just to say, you know, which school do you go from? Do you come from? You have to look at the schools themselves. We have to go to national schools and then have a look at national schools and see do kids from different ethnic groups mix there. It's possible. I think the most likely scenario is that they don't really, you know. So that division is already in national schools. So why do you want to blame vernacular schools? You know. So it's something which unfortunately is afflicting the entire society, and it's not something that can be confined to school children.
No, I mean, in fact, I think there should really be a commission, you know, to really study this, to investigate this question about polarization, how it's come about. Even if it's not a commission, universities should really do a serious study of this. But there's not been a very serious study of what is the root cause of polarization. In fact, in 1987, I had a book. I wrote a book called "The Root Cause of Racial Polarization in this Country," and the cause of it is very clearly not the existence of different medium schools. You know, when you look at it, there are other factors as well. The increasing, the resurgence of Islam in the Malay community. Whose fault is that? You can't blame the existence of the Chinese and the Tamil schools for the increasing insularity of the Muslims. You know, when you are much younger than I am, you know. But during my time, my Malay neighbors to come to my house and to eat and drink with us was not a problem. But it's a problem today. Is it a problem of the Chinese and Tamil schools? It's not. After May 13, of course, the new economic policy. And the new economic policy, well, for the first time, brought in policies that were even more, you know. So, like I said, the commission will study the causes of polarization, which is contributing to polarization. Is the new economic policy and May 13 a bigger contributor of the existence of these schools? These schools have always existed since, like I said, the Chinese schools for nearly 200 years. Let's be serious and let's be fair about where they are. But because it is always tossed up by politicians and it's never seriously taken apart by academicians or by serious students, you know, it is taken for granted. And then when it's pumped out in official propaganda, in textbooks, in films, like we're having a Tanda Putra, a new film coming out, that is going to further entrench these prejudices. You know, for example, we say that schools are not conducive for integration, but our armed forces is more than 95% Bumiputra. Our civil service is more than 90% Bumiputra. So when are we going to? And these have come about mainly because of a very blatant racial discriminatory policy, you know. So when is it going to change? Now if you go to when we have dialogues with the Education Ministry, you find that everybody fronting the Education Ministry are all Malays, Bumi Putras. Does it mean that the Chinese are not interested in education? So where's the truth in all this? You know, let's be. Does it in the old days before May 13? The vice chancellors of some universities were Chinese. We didn't have so many universities then, but however few universities there were still one or two Chinese and Indian. The head of the university hospital was an Indian, the famous Janaraj. Does it mean that now, because you don't see Malays and Chinese and Indians in the education and in these civil service, they are not interested in education? Of course not. There's not a single vice chancellor. Is that because none of the Chinese and the Indians are qualified to be vice chancellors? Of course not. So let's be fair, you know, this kind of stuff, and face the truth of these things.
I personally feel that the Malays, lot of Malayization and Islamization of the education structure. You take away the structure, I think a lot of Indians and Chinese will go to the school, because now they perceive the Malay school as a school only for the Malays, only for the Islamic students. That's a perception the non-Malay parents get. So you take away the perception, you introduce 30% of the teachers are non-Malays in Malay school. Definitely more non-Malay students. 30% of the teacher composition now non-Malays. Then you'll find more non-Malay students going into Malay schools. You have 98% of the schools with the Malay teachers, Islamic teachers. You expect other students. Naturally, there's a tendency to resist such environment. I mean, so why you want to do that? I think the government must be clear enough, you make it everything multiracial. You know, when we talk about all these, we have left one important factor in UITM. UITM caters 100% for Malays. So can I go and say because existence of UITM is created disharmony? No. Why don't you open up? You open up everything. I think now we must be liberal enough. We should not, I mean, we should not be scared of another race, or we should not be scared of contribution from another race. You open it up. You open up UIT. When you talk about abolishing Tamil in primary school, Professor Arshad, I ask him, you open up UITM. Why are you still scared?
My time, the pain in the neck was MalaysiaKini.com.
You just work for the Malaysia Kini, Malaysia Kini.
Daripada Malaysia Kini, please leave the hall.
Don't associate me with Malaysia Kini. I get into trouble.